Hello? Okay, that's good. That is good. Hopefully, that's going to work. Hopefully, the it picks this up, and that works. Testing, testing, 1, 2, 3. Okay, there you go.
Are you okay?
I only know some.
Does anyone need to see it? James or
Yeah, with James, yeah.
Friday? I haven't seen them, so I'll go and find them where they are. Alright.
A, B, C, 1, 2, 3. What shall I sing?
Anything?
I can rap something, but it's not probably the best thing.
Yeah, rapping's good. What about the far side?
What's that?
Is that doing the microphone, is it then?
Yeah.
So James is needed to speak.
Yeah, just say something.
Welcome to OWASP Birmingham. Ich bin ein Birminghamer.
Yeah. Now I can see on your right.
Yeah. And so it's all. So if you push it again,
We're going to sort the slides out.
Oh yeah, I've just kept it on that. I'll put your slides on. Yours is on the Edge browser, Jim.
Oh, nice one. Okay.
I'll put it as slideshow from beginning for you, and then you can click away from here. Hi guys, I'm James. I'm the Director of Cyber Security Practice here at Hayes, cover UK and Ireland. Welcome, firstly. There is no fire alarm, naturally this time, if there is one, it's not a practice, we will go. If anyone doesn't know as well, the toilets are not in this building, they're just out the double door that you came through on the right hand side for ladies first and gents just a bit further on down. You're welcome, have drinks, have pizzas, etc. like we'll have, enjoy the content. The only thing I would say is if you are looking for a new role, we are here to help and can help with that. And people in the team who are based in Birmingham, Lene, who specialise in the moving market. If you're looking to hire, come up with us as well because we can support that. And the final plug is if anyone came to the last one where I actually presented the global findings of the cyber market and trends, we're currently conducting that research at the moment, and so there are some QR codes scattered around. If you could scan and complete the survey, I'd be really grateful. One, because we're a few behind the US and we're a few behind the Germans, and I would love to have more responses than the Americans and the Germans. We're not far behind. You could tip us over, and it does close on Monday. So if you did tip me over right at the end, that'd be great. But enjoy, some great speakers, and yeah, if anyone wants to catch us at the end or during, just grab me. Okay? Perfect. Thank you. Have a great beer.
Right. So, and I'm Nathan, for the people who don't know, Nathan Britton, so I'm a co-lead of OWASP Birmingham. Jim, who's going to talk later, sitting there with a nice red lanyard, is the other co-lead. So, first of all, welcome to OWASP, welcome to your first one, if it's your first, or your third, fourth, whatever it is. Thank you for coming back. Thank you for James, the rest of the crew at Hayes. He knows what he's a great supporter of OWASP Birmingham, and these kind of things can't happen without the venue, the beer, the pizza, and the chair. So thanks as always, James, good supporter of us. And yeah, thanks for coming. Got a bit chilly now, hasn't it? It's starting to get cold, so I appreciate you making the effort. What else to say? So yeah, I'll give you a bit of for those who are new to OWASP, I'll give you a bit of an overview of OWASP, 5 or 6 slides. Won't try and bore you too much before we get Tiraf up for the first talk. But talking of talks, already had a conversation this evening about potential talk. We're always looking for volunteers for talks. We're quite an informal bunch, and we're a broad church. Any kind of application security, or even security in general, really. We've done talks on, we've got one tonight on social engineering, but we've done ones on security champions, from pen testing, gaming machines, application testing, you name it. So we're a broad church, whoever thinks you might want to just put yourself out there. Obviously you can speak to myself or Jim later, but we're always keen on volunteers. The more volunteers we have, the better, to get a bit of a pipeline. Make sure this works. So for those of you who don't know, OWASP, Open Worldwide Application Security Project, used to be Open Web Application, for those who thought it might sound a bit different, but that's because OWASP in general have moved away from being a pure web application security project to now worldwide. What it means by that is it's not just web-based, there's other tools from network scanning and things, and more even processes around, that's not just confined to web. So yeah, and we're I'm representing us tonight, but we're a non-profit foundation, community-led. This is the Birmingham chapter of the course, and there's 250 worldwide, tens of thousands of members, and it's not just talks like this that it puts on. There's also big conferences, at least 3 per year, and training conferences as well, normally on the back of them. So does a lot if you haven't have heard them about them already. Like I said, it's all free, open community. Obviously, we don't charge you to come to these events or to enjoy the pizza. It's all free, but it's all about pushing that security message out to you folk, whether you are in security or you're in development or you're university or all those kind of things. So that's what we're all about. The only thing that's not free actually are those events, but membership it's in dollars, I'm afraid. It's $50 per year to be a member, and one of the benefits is that £50 comes off. $50 comes off any of the events that do charge. Then again, they're quite expensive anyway, so you probably might not miss the $50, but whatever. But these things are all going to be overall free. I think I've said that already, really, to be honest. These are some of the sample projects, if you can read that OWASP do. You can find these all on OWASP.org website. The famous ones are things like OWASP, the dynamic security testing solution. Technically, that's now moved outside of the OWASP family, bought by I want to say the Linux Foundation, but I might be wrong on that one. I think it might be the Linux Foundation. And that's purely because it got so huge, really. Needed a bit more industry behind it, but still famous for that. OWASP top 10, every 2 or 3 years releases the top 10 security risks. I'd say the next one will still have projection number 1. It has since, I don't know, what like 1986, but it gives all that good stuff about what the top 10 risks are. So, and there's a lot more detail. Particular favourite of mine at the moment, I'm using, or we'll be using, is SAM, software maturity model, to see how you can embed secure practices into your organisation and projects. It's kind of what maturity model for areas from design and build and run and all that kind of good stuff. And my favourite is always Shop, which is a purposeful hackable website where you can buy all the fruit you want, in a reality sense, of course. There's challenges in the background where you can gain points and what have you. So there's some of the obvious ones, but many more, depending on where you're up to. Some you've travelled. Welcome, we're more thankful for travelling, but if you're close to any of these, there are other chapters. London's the big hitter in the UK, gets close to 200 attendees often, so that's the big one, but plenty scattered over the UK. And final note really is to say that we are all volunteers, so we do this just for the love of it, I think. So yes, we do. And quickly move on to tonight's agenda. So, only a few minutes behind schedule. Normally we're a lot further behind schedule. So, 2 great talks, as James said. First off, all around some social engineering with Tiraf, who I'll introduce in a second. And then, as I said, fellow OWASP Birmingham co-leader Jim around Zero Trust. One of those buzzwords that are going around at the moment. So, looking forward to that one. And then we'll wrap it up later. Q&A during the session, so if you've got any questions, think of them, and then at the end, unless the speaker's happy to shout at the end of the talks, we can have some questions, and then at the end, if anyone is around or waiting for a train like I will be for an hour, we'll probably pop over to the old joint stock for half a shandy and a Vimto. So yeah, that's me. So finally, before I forget, we are not the only technical-based meetup in Birmingham, and we together as a group like to shout out those other meetups that are happening. There's plenty of them. There's more than that list, but these are the ones that are happening that have events over the next few weeks. Some are pretty obvious as to what they're all about. So I would actively encourage you to take a note, to look on Meetup and Eventbrite and other areas to find out when to subscribe to these groups and hopefully see you at one of those. I'm afraid I'm only going to be at Fusion next week. I'm probably going to miss the others, but Fusion should be a good one. But yeah, they're all worthy of our attendance when we can. So look forward to seeing you there at some point. There's a bit of paper down there by the pens and stickers of all our social media stuff. So take a photo of that or search us out. So it'd be great for you to connect with us. YouTube, we're live streaming, so please do not swear, as Davina McCall once used to say. We're all over Twitter and Slack and LinkedIn and whatever, and you've obviously found us on Meetup, so we'll take that one as a given. But please subscribe. It will be good to have you, so we can keep in touch and make sure you're informed and spread the word as well. And that's me. That's the boring stuff out of the way. I'd like to introduce our first speaker, Tiras. Right.
I won't swear because I think my kids are watching this.
But this all came from a conversation we had at Fusion, actually, a few ones. So just got chatting as we did over a pizza slice, and all of a sudden you got roped in. Where did you find it, James? Oh, there it is. All is yours.
Hello, good evening. I'm Tiras Rai. This is my talk. If we can play this video, it's a video, will it play?
Fingers crossed.
It's only 45 minutes long. It's entertaining because I opened a door without a key. It's a hotel in Norwich somewhere, which is close to the edge of the earth. If you go any further, you fall off. So I had a one-day job to do there, so I went in the evening so I could wake up fresh rather than have a 4-hour car journey. So I got there, went to sleep. In the morning, after breakfast, I went back to my room, and I always do this thing, just like I've shown with any hotel door. I look a bit mental doing it, but this time it actually opened, and I reported it to the guy on the reception desk. He didn't really seem that bothered. But then a week afterwards, I found the video on my phone, and I called them and I said, "Did you have a look?" And they said, "No, we did," and the door is somehow broken. It's fully latched when it's locked, but then if you do that secret thing to it, it opens. So a bit of entertainment. Not again. Oh yeah, it just happened. Something inexplicable happened. Who am I? Tiras Rai. I've pen tested for an awful long time. I've pen tested lots of things in lots of places, small ones, big ones, small companies, large ones, no-name companies. I'm happy to do all the different types of pen testing in the cloud, mobile, apps, infrastructure. Random job that can't really be put into any particular box or bucket. Social engineering, to see your expectations, I'm not an expert, but it's something I came to because there's my contact details, but I'm not very active on Twitter, but you can always send me any kind of spam, pictures of cats or anything like that. Back. This talks about just my experience. There's no instructions here, or this is not what you should do. I talk about pretexts and their importance in having a successful social engineering job, and practical challenges you might encounter. So why the interest? Well, I heard about some colleagues when I used to work for a very large firm doing social engineering jobs, and they were having just buckets and buckets of fun, and I wanted some of that. So I kind of pestered my boss until I had my very own job. Then I got very scared about how do you do this, because I didn't really have a clue. And there's an example in there about when I did my first job, I became a father, a few years before, but then I'd ask my child number one, like, "Do you want an apple?" And he'd say no. And my wife said, "Don't ask him, do you want an apple? Ask him, do you want an apple or a pear?" Then he's more likely to say, "I'll have one of those." So it's a pretty simple example, but it's like an everyday little trick that we can use on people or children. And if you are doing a social engineering job, you can imagine that your 10-year-old Volvo is an Aston Martin and that you're James Bond going on a secret mission, just to make it a bit more exciting and scary for you. there's a big definition of social engineering there. I won't read it, it's boring. But my definition is it when you do a social engineering job, it depends on how it's sold, but roughly it's like, can you get into our building? Can you get into our campus? Can you get into our factory or our airport? I've got some old examples. I tried to Google, I couldn't find any newer ones, but I have one in the slides. They're both about banks, Santander and Barclays, how people got in there and they managed to install some devices to help them rob the bank without holding up a shooter in someone's face. So this is my first job. That's not the building, that's a building, I just found that on Google, looking around for a small building. So the building I was up against in my first job was a 2-story building at the front, and there was a side building which is I think also 2 stories, and there was a building at the back with a canteen and stuff. It was a public sector organisation, and I thought it was a little bit difficult because the actual building was not very big, so I don't know, maybe 60 or 50 people. So it looked difficult because it's the kind of place where everyone knows everyone. When I got the job, my boss said, "Kind of, here's your job." I didn't really know where to start, so that was a bit scary. So I had to make a plan because I didn't already have a plan. It's not as if this is another web application, or it's another council, or it's another cloud job. I pretty much know already what to do. I just need to get ahead and do it. So I had to make my own plan of what I would do, and pretty much it's encapsulated by the first point. Learn as much as possible you can about the target, because if you don't do your research, you're pretty much going to get stuck. So I think about things quite visually. So learn something on the internet or call them up and figure something out, and then you make a little picture in your mind so you can figure out which avenues of attack will most likely work. That will give you a higher chance of success. So yeah, Google Maps, Street View, LinkedIn, Facebook, find out who the key people are, which departments they have, understand what they do as a business, understand who buys from them and who sells for them and who works for them, especially in the trades like landscapers, catering people, what services they have, the building they're in, the environment. Is it a campus? Is it a business park? Is it a multi-tenanted building? Yeah. And read the news, because that gives you a historical perspective about what's going on there, who's coming, who's leaving. The plan. Yeah, there are some parallels with normal everyday pen testing. So when you're attacking, say if it's a website, you already have a picture in your mind about what technology they're using. Some of that you can get from the proposal if you're working for a big commercial firm, so you know what technology it is before you turn up to do the work. Are these my slides? No, kidding. Yeah. Yeah. So in a social engineering job, the avenues of attack that look most likely, you can flesh them out, and the ones that look like that won't work, you discount them, just like a normal pen testing job where you're pen testing in a local network and it's a council. You know pretty much what's going to work, so you do your normal stuff, and then if that doesn't work, you got a plan B. And yeah, sounds simple, doesn't it? It didn't to me at the time, because it was my first time. Yeah, the open source intelligence, there's so much information on the internet, but you need to sometimes spend a bit of time and use some tools that maybe you wouldn't use in your normal pen testing career. Like a few years ago it used to be the Harvester, where it will Google for you and then bring back a list of email addresses at target.com, and then you could use that in a further search to figure out who those people are, what they do, try and look for their LinkedIn profiles, figure out who's coming and going, look at the little things that they're saying on LinkedIn. And the DR site with telephone numbers, that's one time when I did a telephone social engineering job at a solicitor's firm, we tried to find useful information on the internet, but we didn't really find anything until we came across, it was like a site for disaster recovery where they'd listed a bunch of telephone numbers and email addresses so that they would have that to refer to if something crazy happened and the building blew up or whatever. Well, that was that was very important for us because it gave us a list of telephone numbers, and we couldn't really find that anywhere else. It wasn't like it was listed on a normal website, because if you're if you're a recruitment consultant, that's really important information for you. But it's like companies have a gatekeeper, and they don't just list here are all our contact details, unless it's like a council and they have to, and they show all the details of the councillors and key people in the council. But if it's a commercial firm, they kind of guard that a bit. Yeah, the admin, legal, the boring aspects. When you do jobs, you have this get out of jail letter, 1 page, that roughly says, this is who I am and this is what I'm doing. So if you get caught short and the security guard's about to throw you on the floor and stamp on your head, you can show him this piece of paper, and hopefully it doesn't end up in grievous bodily harm. So I never had to use this piece of paper, but you really shouldn't be without it, because if you're on a sticky wicket, that stops your brains from leaving your skull. Make sure you've got all your commercial stuff signed off. Obviously, don't go to site and start before you've got a proper contract for this work, because that's pretty stinky. Shouldn't do that. And here's an example from quite a few years ago. A company called Coalfire, they were engaged to do some physical social engineering work in is it Dallas or somewhere? So they had to break into a courthouse or some kind of court building, but there was something about they were out of scope because they weren't working in the specific hours they were supposed to. And apparently the people, this Winner Mercurial, they tried to sue the firm that they were contracted to break into, because they kind of said that you weren't in the correct engagement, and they were using physical attacks or lockpicking, and they weren't supposed to do that. But you need your I's to be crossed and your T's to be dotted. That's the wrong way, isn't it? But yeah. Have a clear idea of when persistence becomes aggression. I've had a few jobs where the pretext just wasn't really good enough, and when that happens, you need to blag it a bit, and you need to push a little bit, not physically, but you need to push back and handle their objections and try to get where you're not supposed to get. But you need a clear idea of when too much is too much, because you don't want any kind of legal trouble professionally. That doesn't really work out very well. Here's an example. This was only reported in The Sun and GB News, so make your own conclusions based on that. But the headline says, female reporters were left terrified after someone tried to physically get into it's like a regional BBC building in Nottingham. So it looks like they were engaged to get into the building, but they made a bit of a hash of it, and apparently they scared some people. So you don't really want to be doing that. The most important thing is you need a pretext. And what's a pretext? It's a rock solid plan, and you need to have all your prerequisites ready, so that's your story, that's your background about what's going to get you into the building. When I did my first job, I remembered watching a snippet on the TV. It was about Mossad doing some kind of a training exercise. So the trainer would take him for a little walk somewhere around Tel Aviv, and he would point at a balcony, and he would say, okay, I want you up in that balcony, waving to me in like 10 minutes. Go, make it up, just make it up. Obviously don't hurt anyone, don't climb up, don't hurt yourself. And then I Googled this to see if it was a false memory or not, but I found something else about someone training for a movie, and they said something like that. So I think it's a real memory, but yeah, that's part of a pretext. Like the man who was charged to get up to the balcony, the pretext he had was that I'm from the local council, and what we're going to do is this building frontage, we're going to do it up because it looks a bit tatty. So I just want to get up to your balcony and check it out structurally to see how much work we need to do. And when he got out there with the balcony with the two old people, he said, "There's my boss. Just wave at my boss." So they all waved at his boss to say that, yeah, that's my capture the flag. I've done it now. So what could your pretext be? You know, in offices like this where you could be charged with getting in, that could be your assignment. they have services like people who come and empty the bins, the cleaners, who come and fix things like technical equipment, like these multifunction printers. They have pot plants. Someone needs to come and water those. Someone, if they have rats or mice, someone needs to come and do the work of showing the rats or mice the way out. And if you've got no pretext, you need to resort to the cheap and cheerful, the tailgating, the blagging, the making it up as you go along. But that's not really ideal. But if you've got nothing else, that's what you're going to have to use. Where's the next button? Should we have a vote? Has anyone ever had social engineering carried out at their workplace? Or there's no hands? There's one hand, two hands. Okay, good. And when it comes to making a pretext, use your own experiences. Like if you are a consultant, you probably have to often go to different workplaces and sign in. But you've probably seen people with ladders or special badges and they just walk straight through. So it's not like they always know the person on the desk, but the person knows the person with that badge or wearing that uniform, we just let them in. Anyone else has to sign in. But yeah, it's not magic ladders or magic buckets. But if you remember your own experiences signing into places or your own workplace, you can use those to make a pretext which you'll be likely to work. And the practical difficulty is when you do it commercially. Say if the salesperson gets together with the people who make the proposal and propose the job to the customer, they have to make a balance. So if it's a small building and it's a small factory with a depot out the back, they won't say kind of, we've got 30 days to get in, because the customer is going to say that's crazy. We're not going to pay for 30 days at however many £1,000 a day. So that's the difficulty you've got. If you've got 5 days to prepare a pretext, you could probably do a pretty good job. But if it's a 2-day job and there's only one person on the job, then you might spend a day making a pretext. And if you've got nothing after a day, you're going to have to blag it pretty much. So that's a practical difficulty of doing commercial jobs. But if you're a criminal, probably you can spend half an hour a day doing it slowly, calling them up, feeling them out, having a look. But if you do it commercially, you don't have that luxury. But that's fine. That's fine. That's the way it goes with hacking or doing something malicious, or whether it's professionally or you're a bad character, bank robber. And when I do jobs, I've always thought there are particular key times of the day, like the mornings or even before 9 o'clock, when the service people get there, cleaners might exit, or there might be a particular time of the day when people try to head to their office, and that's something that you can use, especially when you don't have a solid pretext. And at home time, I've got an example further on where, people just stop caring at a certain time. A few days ago, I found this randomly on Twitter. It's someone who posts about pen testing stuff, but he said that he was, or she was, in the doctor's office with a child, and these two characters came in and asked the receptionist, kind of, we need to plug in to get some, because we need our tools need some power. So whoever this person was says, add this one to my arsenal. Property management stuff. Property management stuff is pretty high on my list already. And look at those guys. Do they look legit? Yeah, they look legit. They've got a fiberglass ladder and they're sizing up the job like, it's going to need, And they're still outside. So this is a list about my first job. I thought, kind of, what stuff will I need? Because if you're traveling miles away from home or your base, you don't want to be coming back to get ladders or a camera and stuff. So I haven't used an implant, so I haven't done a job and actually plugged something in, or had to plug something in and then hack them from outside. It's not something I've done, but if that what the job requires, that's something like a Raspberry Pi with some 5G or something, so you can get it to it from the outside. That's what you're going to need, but I've never had to prepare one of those. Outfits. So if you're going suited and booted, you need to take your suit to site. or workman's overalls or whatever it is. Toolbox, I've taken a toolbox on a job. Camera, well, yeah, you could just put your phone in your top pocket and switch the camera on. But for reports, stills always work best. A drone, I've never taken a drone to site, but if there's no other way, if I've been in situations where you can use Google Maps or you can use Street View to have a look at the outside of buildings or an industrial estate, but Street View won't go all the way around the estate and show you the internal bits. So you can walk there, or a drone, if they're pretty inexpensive. Stationery, yeah, take everything you've got, because last thing you want to do, if you need a key piece of thing, you don't want to be finding a stationery shop and printing stuff. You need that all prepared. And bags, lots of bags, different bags, because if you're having a tailgating pretext or scenario because you haven't got anything else to rely on, if your hands are full, people are nice, and when people are nice, we should take advantage. Yeah, your dressing up doesn't need to be perfect. As long as you've got the key stuff that makes people look at you and not think something wrong with him, that will do. It doesn't need to be perfect. And a lot of the time, you don't have a long time to prepare stuff. So, this is my first job. It's a public sector thing, and the job is pretty much like get yourself in there. But it's a 2-stage job. First stage is get yourself in the building, like comfortable sat down, and the next stage is they've got a data room. So get yourself into the data room. So yeah, it looks difficult because everyone knows everyone. Yeah, I don't have a clue. So it's 2 man-days of effort. So I get like a Monday and Tuesday to do this. The first day, I pretty much burn it just by doing research. And the next day, I have to attack. So I physically get myself to the site. So I've made a plan, and I'm following the plan. But after a lot of effort on the first day to come up with a pretext, I have nothing. I have nothing. So I'm a bit scared. And that's one of the cars from rectexotics.com. It's a sponsor of mine. No, I'm kidding. So yeah, I don't feel very comfortable or confident going to the job because I don't have a pretext. And yeah, if I had a pretext, I'd have something to settle my stomach. But I get there and I'm very nervous. So I get to site early. I meet my contact. I get my googe wet signed, so it looks legit. And I still don't have a pretext. I get to site, I drive to their area, park up, and I start to literally walk around the building and just size it up. But that's not such a good idea. It's quite a high risk thing to do because there's like foliage and trees. It's not as if someone would normally walk there. So I run the risk of being found out, but this is where your research comes into its own. So if you're doing something risky like walking around the building, and if someone opens a window and says, "Hey, who are you?" I'm going to call the security. You need to have something to say to them, like, "Oh, I was trying to find a shortcut to Edwards Close," and they will tell you, "Well, no, Edwards Close is on an estate. It's over there. You need to leave and then go down the driveway." But you need to have something to tell them, because you can't just say, "No, I'll just walk off," because they're going to think that's pretty out of the ordinary. So we're going to report you to security. Or before I do my walks around, I call reception a few times and try and feel them out. Like, is there a canteen, or will a sandwich van turn up at 11 o'clock or 12 o'clock? Because if that's the case, then what I might do, if I've got nothing else, I'll buy a bunch of sandwiches, get talking to someone, say I'm new, and then we'll walk in together, and that will make it easier. I'm sure you've all done that if you've got workplaces with sandwich vans. People have their hands full and other people hold the door open for them. One thing I have done is called up a place I was going to and said that I'm autistic and I get very nervous when I go to new places. So can you describe the reception area? Because I want to know, do they have a turnstile? Is it just freely walk in? Or, I know, is that ethical? Probably not. But I've been doing this for 20 years and I know ethical hackers, not really sometimes ethical people. Yeah, it's the kind of building everyone knows everyone. There's no sandwich van for mingling. and I don't see any other good vectors. So yeah, I've already said I walked around the building for a while. I loiter and fake smoke. I don't smoke, but there's a walkway, covered walkway that is joining two buildings. So I guess people don't get wet when they move from one to the other. And I loiter there for ages, trying not to look too awkward. And no one's coming, no one's going. So I go back to the car. And on this day, it's raining pretty heavy. So I get pretty wet. I get back in the car and the whole thing steams up. And I just look odd, like, what is that guy doing in a steamy car? Like, if someone's looking out the window, it doesn't look good. And then at 1 o'clock, my client contact, who signs my googe, I see him leaving. So I calculate he's probably going to lunch. And I'm acutely aware at that point, I'm running out of ideas. And then I get quite scared. Like, this is my first job. If I don't do a good job, I'm never going to get another job. But I realize it's fear. It's fear that's paralyzing me. I don't want to make a big risk or take a big risk. But that's probably what I need to do. Don't have a pretext. Sometimes if you work with other pen testers, you can say, you know, I'm doing an internal network job. I've come across this problem. You can Google the answer, or you can ask your colleagues. But in a social engineering job, you can't really do that. It's already too late if it's the second day of the job. Can't pull it out of the bag now. So just like a normal pen testing job, like on the first day, it's always a bit of a car crash. On the second day, you normally need to stop, take note of what's gone wrong, sort it out. Yeah, I realize I'm paralyzed by fear, and it's time to take a big risk. Because at 2 o'clock on the second day, you just need to do something. So the answer is, I'm just going to blag it. I don't really know what the reception area is like, other than the little bits I've learned from calling a receptionist and saying I'm autistic, tell me about what's there. So I've learned a little bit. So I'm suited and booted. I'm pretty much drenched already. So I get my laptop bag and another bag, and I just walk into reception, and I go for the first door. It's access control. So I go for the doorknob, and I just look at the receptionist. I just smile a little bit, and she reaches under the desk, and she just lets me in. So 9 times out of 10, that just wouldn't work, but it's worked today because I had no pretext. I'm winging it. So I get into there's a little corridor. So the first door I find, I listen for a bit, and there's no one chatting. So I let myself in, and I sit down at a desk. There are 2 desks in there. So I think this is pretty comfortable. I don't need to go out back to the car. So I get my laptop out and just start reporting, taking pictures and opening cabinets. And then a lady walks in after about half an hour, and she's on a walking stick. And she sees me at a desk, and she almost falls over. Luckily, she doesn't. And she said, she asked me, "Who are you? What are you doing here?" And I said, "I'm working for the IT manager." I say his name, and she says, "Okay, yeah, that's fine. You can. I think it's okay. Can I stay here for a while?" She said, "Yeah, you can stay there." But the thing is, she doesn't call Nick or Ian or whoever the hell and say, "There's a strange man in my office." So that's fine. I just sit there for a while, and it's lunchtime. So she says, "Has Nick sorted out any lunch for you?" And I say no, because I know he's left. And she says, "Okay." And then she calls the canteen, and she says, "Well, you know, are you still serving?" And then she walks me down there and sits me next to her friends, and I have like a turkey dinner. It's close to Christmas. And a guy comes with a suit, and he's asking me lots of questions, and I'm batting them back. And he's like, "Oh, because we can't be too careful, because it could be anyone." yeah, it could be anyone. And the second part of the job was to get into the data room. So it's not like a big data center or something. It's just like a small room. So after lunch, I get myself there by asking my way, because I don't know my way around. And I get in front of I can hear the buzz of the fans and the computers and everything, so I know it's the right place. It says data room. Then I'm looking at it. It's the same access control that they've got on the front door near the reception. And just when I'm about to push the ceiling tile up to see how far the ceiling goes, someone comes from the IT department. They've come back from lunch. I don't know if they've seen me on a camera or he's going to the data room anyway, but I say, "Well, here's my googe," and he says, "Okay, I know what you're doing, that's fine." And I leave. But the next part of the job, or the second part, was to get into the data room. So I leave. Yeah, I get lucky. It's a Daft Punk. yeah, it's not a masterclass in how to do the job, but it's my first job, and I've got a clear win. But it's not pretty, not pretty at all. But that's fine. When you write it up with pictures, it's fine. You've delivered the value, you've done the job. The next part is to go into the data room. So I wait until about 7. I get dressed I've got an old boiler suit. It looks raggedy, with a big Stanley toolbox. It's like, I don't know, 3-foot toolbox. It's got tools in it. So I present myself there because there's people who, well, they answer phone calls at night, important phone calls. And I present myself at the door and I say, I'm here to do some work in the data room. I haven't got access, and I just, mess around with some lanyards and say they haven't given me access. And the lady says, okay, that's fine, I'll let you in. So they let me in, and she says, well, on the way out, just let me know that you've gone. So I don't need to do anything else. I take some pictures, don't touch anything. And I leave, and I announce myself on the way out. And then on the way home, on the motorway, I get a call from the people who have engaged me, and they say, have you just been into our data room? I said, yes. And he said, that's fine, because the lady who let you in thought that it was a bit odd because you were only in there for 5 minutes. She said that she thought that's odd. If you were here for half an evening, I wouldn't have raised any concern in her mind. But seeing as you were there for like 5 minutes, I said, yeah, that was me. So that was that job done. Sorry, how are we doing for time? I've no time concept whatsoever.
Yeah, you're right.
Okay. The second job, it was a two branch job, one in Wales and one in the Midlands. And I've been thinking about the rat man, or professional pest control operative, and I thought that would be good for this site. So I make a lot of calls, and I think this is a goer. And what makes it interesting is that if you have to deliver an implant, the pest man allows you to get underneath desks and look up skirts. No, it allows you to get under a desk and plug in something to Cat5 and power. So that's a good opportunity to implant something. I think it's a 2 or 3 day job. The first day I get there, are these my slides? I did this. Yeah, same as on here. So the only car that I've got at the time is a BMW, and it doesn't really work because the rat man doesn't drive a BMW. He drives a white transit van that says something on the side like, we kill rats or something. So in full view of the reception desk, because it's a business park, so I don't know what it's like really before I get there. So I park up and I come in with my tools, and I say I'm the pest control man, we've been ordered by such and such. And I don't know if I've seen it happen before, but what they do is when they sign in somewhere, they ask the receptionist to get the folder from underneath the desks that shows them where the baits are and like who did the job last. And I ask for that form to make myself look legit. And there's no form because maybe they don't have a pest problem. So anyway, I argue a little bit, not argue, but argue nicely. And finally they agree to let me in, but they're not quite happy. So I go around and I lay bait traps, but I go to Screwfix or something, or Tool Station. I get the little plastic traps, but I take the poison out because we don't want any issues, the kids eating poison. It's not going to end good. So I snap them back, and I've got a bag full of them. I go different parts of the building, and I make a map, make myself look official. And I draw on where I've left the bait traps. And then when I get back to reception, they're pretty uncomfortable with me having gone in and come out like that. And I'm like, sign this form, because I'm a contractor. If you don't sign the form, I don't get paid. And they're like, oh, I don't know. They think maybe it's a scam. Is he going to try and send us a massive bill? Like, no, it's just say I was there so I can get paid. A lady comes, she signs the form, but they maybe go back, get the rat traps back because they don't know you're legit. So I get a second attempt to plant more implants or to check everything. Anyway, some guy turns up, and because I'm saying this is not going to look good in my boss, but sign the form, he gives me his business card. He just says, well, if you get in trouble with the boss, call me and I'll explain everything that happened so you don't get in trouble. So I take his card. This is a thing about persistence and using their own niceness kind of against them. Yeah, you could say I'm a contractor. I won't get paid unless this happens. I've travelled from a long way away. This is my first day. My boss is a monster. All of that, everything, anything else you can think of. Can't remember. Once I did a job at a place where my firm had a previous social engineering job. So I thought that would be a more difficult target because now they're already aware and they're probably going to be a bit wary of people coming to do jobs. So I worked with the projects of being the pack tester. So I wanted to, get devices and tools and check dates on them, labels on the back. And the lady didn't have it at all. But what they did do is they took me to an office, sat me down, had a discussion, and then told me I couldn't come in after I'd already come in. But that's the value of being persistent, because if you argue back, but if you don't handle your objections, like when the job's witnesses come to your door and you're naked and I don't have time, and they're like, oh, but we did give you this, give you the leaflet, and they say, no, I'm naked, I don't have time, but then you just come in, and so you need to handle objections and be persistent, but don't start pushing or shoving. That's too much. The second location of that first job, where I was the wrap man, I chose to be the network engineer. So I was going to say that there's some problem with the switches. I need to come to test them because when people visitors plug in, they're not negotiating properly and they're experiencing slow speeds. So it was a building with quite a few floors, quite a few tenants. And when I got there was the option of taking the lift or the stairs. And for some reason I chose the stairs. I didn't fancy coming out of a lift and being presented with a reception desk. And on that day, it was that confidence, and I just really feel that confident. So I went upstairs, kind of ran up the stairs, and when I got there, I was a bit flustered. It was a warm day anyway. When I got up, I pretty much got into a small area, and there was just a back door. So I knocked at the door for a while, and nothing happened. And I thought, well, if nothing works, I'll go back down. I'll take the lift back up. Anyway, after knocking for a while, a lady came to the door, let me in. She's like, who are you? What do you want? I'm like, oh, I'm Tirith Rai. I've come to check the network switches and such and such. And she gave me a look like, with Columbo. He hears the story and he's like, is that true? And then she says, who are you? And I say, Tirith Rai. And then the look says, I don't believe any of that. And I thought, I'll just try this. I opened my flip pad and I took out the card that the guy gave me previously in Wales, and his name was like Mervyn Davis Hughes or something, a proper, like a Welsh name. And she said, who are you? Because I was talking too quickly and I was just a bit flustered. Nothing was coming out clearly. And I said, here's my card. I'm Mervyn Hughes Davis. And I showed her the card and she's like, okay, I'll take that. So she takes the card and goes to call one of her colleagues, like a head office or something. And this place is an old building, and it's got these partitions where up to about waist height, it's like a fabric, maybe cardboard inside, so you can't see through, but the rest of it is just glass. And this thing is paper thin, so I can hear every word. And she's on the phone to someone. She's like, this guy's here, he wants to check the switches, and his name is Mervyn something Hughes. And I can't see her, but I can see what she's doing. She's holding this card and stretching it and thinking, and she says to the guy on the other end, this card, it looks a bit flimsy. It doesn't look real. I don't like this guy. She's saying stuff like that. And whoever's on the other end, he's like, it's fine. Sounds legit. Let him in. So she lets me in. I sit down. I plug in. Then I get a message from whoever was sat next to that guy that she just called is a pen tester, because there's a pen test going on as well as the social engineering work. And he said, have you just got in there? Because I'm the pen tester. I'm doing this other part of the job, because I've heard a bit of a strange conversation. I'm like, yeah, I'm the guy. So anyway, I plug in, pretty much that's what I need to do, and I'm flustered. So she gets me a glass of water, and on the way out, she's like, I'm sorry about that earlier. I just had to make sure your story was good. I'm like, yeah, you did pretty well. You did everything, but it still didn't work out because someone else said, sounds legit. So that was that job. How am I doing for time? Okay. This is a fancy job. I live in Birmingham, but this is like way up north somewhere. And it's a nice new office, like glass and steel. Because it would take me so long to get there, I'll go the previous evening and have a good look around. And I want to use the Ratman pretext, but I want it to be solid this time. I don't want to have to argue or, get involved in a bit of a tussle. So I want to make a proper pretext and be professional rather than the blagger. That's worked up till now, but that's the thing about luck. You can ride your luck and then you fall flat on your face. So I have a look inside the building. These are just samples. I've found these images Googling around. If it's like a multi-tenanted building, it will have like, this is on who's on this floor, this is who's on this floor, and maybe if it's like one on the end, Charter Court, it will say where the reception for the company is. So that one is on the ground floor. But sometimes if companies have a few floors, they'll have like 9, 10, 11, the reception will be on 11. That's where you'll sign in and then you can go to another floor. But also at the bottom of these signs, it will say who manages the building. And sometimes it might say it's owned by like another insurance firm or whatever. So my plan was, I'm a tenant in this building, so I pose to be a tenant, and I say to the managing agent that there's a pest issue. So what we want is, here's our contractor for dealing with the pests. When he comes on Thursday or Friday, have the people on the front desk sign him in so he can do whatever he wants and allow him to get to wherever he wants. So I buy a domain which looks like the domain of one of the firms who's legitimately in the building, and I send an email to the managing agent to make my pretext and say, we're your tenant, but this is what we want from you. It turns out I do get a good response, and they say kind of, when you arrive on Thursday, speak to the person on the desk. They give a name and a number, and this person will let you in. So I've got a proper pretext, but I don't get to use it because it arrives when I'm on the way home. And what I do anyway is pretty much just walk in and tailgate someone. I sit down next to someone, I kind of ask, can I just sit here? It's a free desk. I sit down, plug in, and we have a conversation, 15, 20 minutes about football. I go to the canteen or the kitchen area, steal some fruit, get some tea, go back, have another chat about football. So I ended up tailgating, but I did have a proper pretext. Obviously, you report that. That's fine. When I did this job, I bought the domain, and I used like mail in a box to send the mail. But that's a bit tricky because if you have your mail in a box in DigitalOcean, chances are it will get marked as spam. So you need to do it properly and test it, because else your mail gets sent to spam, it will never arrive. So that's something you need to practice or do properly. And we've got a croissant up there because having a good pretext relies on getting in between the layers, just like the butter in a good croissant. When I've been researching pretexts, what I found useful is to research like commercial leases, because you want to put yourself in between the layers. So the receptionist at the American doctor's office, she's responsible for her reception. Who comes to fix the lights, that's not really her area. Maybe it's the landlord. Maybe she doesn't care. Maybe she opened the door to the IT room to let them plug in because she's got the keys to it, but she doesn't really care. So you need to find the bit that whoever you're talking to doesn't care about. And when it comes to buildings like this, that's the services. That's a good layer too, because no one can say, that's my area, and I know you're not responsible for that. These are my slides, but I don't know which one's next. Hard targets. So you might say the examples haven't been that hard so far, and you'd probably be right. So what about a data center with, a big fence, a small fence, an airlock thing for vehicles, and an airlock thing for people, or maybe 2 airlocks for people? So how are you going to get in there? And I thought, well, if I was going to do a data center, what came to mind was a few years ago, or I don't know, maybe months ago, there was a Facebook outage where they made a networking change, but they couldn't undo it quickly. But I thought probably why they can't undo it quickly is they basically cut off access to part of their network. So what they need to do is get someone physically into the data center to undo the change. Probably some engineer has driven for a few hours to get to a data center and now can't get in, even though they should legitimately, they're a proper employee, but there's no change control and their name's not on the list. So to get into a hard target, you'd have to have a proper pretext, or you'd try and get yourself in like a temporary member of staff. But if your name's not down, the security person is not going to let you in. So it would have to be rock solid, or you'd have to get a proper job at the center, but that would take some time. So yeah, if it's a hard target, I've thought about an engineer, but the people who make the connections inside the data center, but I've seen how this works, and they need so many layers of change control and things happening. Like, that's a hard target. So you'd have to take your time and make a proper pretext. There's no other way around that. Sometimes when I've done phone jobs, I've used this website, which is you load your credit. They give you a number after you tell them which number you want to be, and you send a text to that number or you call it up, and then when your caller ID gets to your target, it's whoever you want it to be. I checked a little while ago. My credit from years ago is still on there, so it's still a valid thing. I did a hospital maybe about a year ago. Again, I didn't have a pretext, but very early in the morning, before I was about to take it to breakfast, I realised I've already got one day to do it. It's a pretty underscoped job. So what I'll do is I'll go early, like 7 o'clock, and just have a look around. So it was to get into, it's an open campus anyway, it's a hospital, but it was to get into the IT department building in the hospital. So I went to have a look. When I got out of my car, I was feeling pretty jolly and I had a lot of confidence. And the first chap I saw, he had a bag of sand or something, like grit or something. So I just chatted to him 5-10 minutes, just because if you're going to go into a building, if people have already seen you like loudly chatting to someone who works there, that looks good, that can add to whatever you've got. So I basically followed a nurse in, long and short of it. But before getting into the proper building, you get into the unsecure part, went the full length of a corridor, went up the stairs, but it was access control, so I went back down. Ideally, the only thing I wanted to do was to plug into the network somewhere, and there were some meeting rooms, but they had these, the old style push buttons, so I tried a few, but it didn't work. So there was a nurse turning up for work. There was nothing clinical going on in that building, but I don't know, maybe they're based there. So I basically followed her in, but before I followed her in, I was loitering in the area, and there was one of those signs, like on the first floor there's this, on the second floor there's that. And she asked me, like, who are you? Where are you going? And I knew the name of the person who did the planning and the development. So I said, like, I'm here to meet that guy, and he's from that department. And she's like, okay, I'll show you. So she pretty much let me in. And then when we got up the stairs, she started asking a lot of questions. And I thought, better leave her now. And I saw another guy. And I kind of said, okay. So I just literally left her and pretty much ignored her. Stood next to a guy who was at his desk and kind of said, hello, how you doing? So she thought that he knows this guy. And because that guy saw me talking to her, he would think she knows that guy. So this looked legit. And anyway, I sat down, took a few pictures. They're blurred out because this is someone's real workplace. Yeah, I walked around after that. One thing I did was, these are the people who deal with like engineering changes in the hospital. So I said, can you like email me the plans for this floor? And they did it, even though it wasn't like at nhs.net. So I took loads of pictures. And then, I went towards reception, and they were just still opening up. So there were some keys in the door. I got challenged, but I just batted them straight back. And I told her, like, your keys are in the door. Someone could steal those. And, if I got asked questions, I would say I'm the engineer from, look at that guy. He's cockeyed. But I had a high vis, and that looks good, and a clipboard. I didn't have a ladder or anything else. I just had my laptop bag. But, a high vis jacket. It's worth something. And then I was asked to go for a walk around in the hospital, but not touch anything, don't interfere with any patients. That was not something to do. So they had these kiosk screens that I guess when you arrive in the imaging department, you sign yourself in. This one wasn't working. It might have been because the Cat5 socket was hanging off the wall, but there was a plug socket right next to it. So if you wanted to, you could pull up a seat, plug into the network, and have power for your laptop. That was just go and have a look. They said so, something that I saw. But anyway, later on, that day or the next day, I hacked the internal network and got AD. So and that's the same network. So that's pretty bad if they've got that hanging around. It's a hospital. It's not so good. But that's it. I don't know if I've overrun or underrun, but does anyone have any questions?
Would you say it's important to be a pen tester as a prerequisite to becoming, like, going into social engineering?
It's hard to answer the question because I'm a pen tester and I've been a pen tester for a long time. But I don't think you need to be a pen tester. No. I'm sure there's plenty of good books about social engineering. I can't tell you which ones to read because I haven't read them. So, but yeah, if you're a long-time pen tester and you come to something new like the cloud, you learn it as you go along and you read other people's reports when you QA them. So that's your kind of training. And if you're in a bigger firm, there's always people to learn off. So yeah, I don't think you need to be. Yeah.
I was just thinking, what would you say is more in demand? Is it social engineering or other aspects of pen testing?
It's the other aspects. It's been a while since I've done a social engineering job, but that always was a very small part of what we did. Very, very small. So when the jobs came up, like there was always a queue of people wanting the jobs, but there's like so many jobs where you end up in a data center or looking at web apps or sitting on the floor of a data center. There's always a ton of that with the social engineering jobs. Yeah, some firms just don't want it. Some firms think it'll be difficult, or for whatever reason they don't really take it. But yeah, that's it.
Also, that's quite interesting what you said, because post-COVID, people are going back into the office, so
Yeah.
they assume that their buildings are secure.
Yeah. But now I'm pretty much a one-man band, and I don't have a huge sales force to sell to big firms, so it's going on, but yeah, it's been a while since I've done a job like that. Yeah.
I only finished uni about a year and a half ago. I've been working at Fujitsu in a grad role since then. But I've been looking to get into social engineering, pen testing, that kind of thing. So what would you suggest for me would be the best avenue as a complete fresh face in science sec to get into that kind of role?
I guess you can apply for a job as a junior pen tester,
Yeah.
and the learning stuff when it comes to everyday pen testing, web apps, infrastructure. There's so many good videos on YouTube, tutorials. It's all about your time, the time you can spend. Yeah, it's all free. No need to spend a penny.
Yeah, I'm doing Hack the Box at the moment.
Excellent. And yeah, learn. People on Twitter, take it all in.
Absolutely.
That's
Thank you.
Good stuff. Right. Thank you again. Thanks to you. I think the takeaway for me is I need to get myself one of these bits of paper of get out of jail free. I might chat to someone about later on and see how legal that may be.
you can't use it at home.
You've got to insert. Oh right. Okay. Well, that I do now know. If I ask my lad if he wants to do his homework tonight, it's either do homework or have a pear. Wasn't it? Yeah. Right, yeah.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, I'll try that one. Right, we'll have a very quick 2-3 minute comfort break, top up of a drink, any pizza slices still left. But yeah, should we have a 3-4 minute turnaround and we'll be back for Zero Trust. Yeah? Right. Don't go too far.
What's that?
We get going.
Come on, Tira. two slices. Was they up there? Those are. Right, as I said earlier on, fellow Birmingham OWASP co-leader Jim, putting me to shame. Second talk, I think, one of these. I've done, well, it's the nearest round number, 0. So,
Haven't done one before.
I thought you'd done one before. Online, did you do one?
Did one online.
Did one online.
Right, yeah.
Counts as half.
In COVID, yeah.
So I'm only 1.5 behind. Right, okay. Jim, up to you.
Thanks, Dave. Oh, that was lovely. I thought you were going to take the piss. Hello, everyone. I'm Jim. So I'm one of the chapter leads. And this is a talk that I did at a conference in Amsterdam a couple of months ago. Title is The Art of Secure Software, Zero Trust Delivery Pipelines. So ChatGPT actually helped me come up with the very sort of snappy title. Delivery pipelines, very salient. Zero Trust, equally very salient. So I sort of reverse engineered a talk from that to please marketing. But hopefully you get something out of this. Can I just get a sense in the room? Who's like more on the sort of software applications side? I suppose like building systems rather than, and who's on like the more sort of security network side? Yeah, cool. Same hands went up. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, cool. I just want to know how to pitch it and where to sort of emphasise the different bits because I'm kind of both. Yeah, and not to exclude anyone who's a student or anything else, or just here out of curiosity. Yeah, cool. Right, so why protect the pipeline? So this is software delivery pipeline is a great pinch point to apply security, and the reason is it aligns well with sort of DevOps culture, automation, a lot of those sort of practices that are applied in sort of modern cloud systems. But also on the flip side, that if your cloud pipeline gets owned, then that's going to have a massive blast radius, and it's going to have sort of effect on a lot of your services essentially. So it can be a real weak point. So yeah, it's a good place to focus on for security. So that's the pipeline bit. What about zero trust? Well, zero trust is one of those terms. I don't know if anyone's like me and gets loads of spam email, like even at the weekend, just constantly coming through, and it's just ridiculous. But yeah, zero trust security is one of those things that the vendors seem to say, oh, it's zero trust, have a webinar with me. And a little bit like cloud, like agile, like all of those terms, it's like the meaning of it can get lost a little bit. And I like to kind of go back to the roots of stuff and understand what things actually are. And what Zero Trust was originally, it was a security architecture approach. You can go all the way back to 2004 in the Jericho Forum, which was a lot of security professionals in the UK actually came together and started talking about deperimetization. Now, we're kind of like, for the software dev audience, we're like deep into sort of network, like arcanery, like how things were in 2004, right? It's a little bit irrelevant now, but I think it's interesting to know where things come from. It then was, so the Jericho Forum came up with deperimetization, which was a network architecture. Forrester, who like Gartner, one of these companies that sort of CTO brain, produced some decent reports. They came up with build security into your network's DNA. And then a second report in 2016, no more Chewy centers. And then in 2020, you've got the Zero Trust architecture. So the principles of Zero Trust by this point, the architectural principles, are broader than just the network. And part of that is because computing had changed, right? We've now got the cloud, everything's online. So there's a sort of, there's a deep rootedness to this Zero Trust thing, as well as all the marketing nonsense. That's the takeaway, right? Yeah, so what is it? Right, so there's two answers to that. The serious answer, like the gentleman in the crowd who's wants to get into cybersecurity, like read the NIST report, right? It's like everything from NIST is really detailed, fantastic, very, very granular. And then there's a Zero Trust octopus, because it's salient. 4 principles that I picked out that I'm going to talk about today: least privilege, verified trust, breach ready, asset aware. And hopefully we'll all know what I mean by that by the time I stop speaking. Cool. Okay, so let's get back to delivery pipelines, software delivery pipelines. What's the threat model? Well, again, taken from network engineering, a good way of threat modeling is to say, well, what is the attack surface and what is the blast radius? And if you haven't heard those terms, I'll try and give a sense of what I mean by that. So we've got a software delivery pipeline. I guess show of hands who uses a software delivery or has used a software delivery pipeline, or somewhere in your organisation you've got a pipeline for delivering software changes to production. So your attack surface is where data flows into that. So it might come off the network. I mean, if you're on the internet, packets might come in, requests, logins, all the rest of it. You've got code that's been committed by your developers. You've got dependencies which you might be downloading, like log4j or what else? Anaconda. There's millions of these things. And then you've got developers who are like actively people who are doing stuff, right? So you've got all these data flows into your software delivery pipeline. Your software delivery pipeline then has got access to secrets like passwords for databases and that kind of thing. It's got access to cloud APIs like maybe AWS or Azure or GCP or whatever. Or maybe it's like the OpenAI, like, or something even newer, right? That is very 2023. And then typically, if they're doing deployment, they've got access to your environments, or at least the artifacts that get built will get deployed into your environments, because otherwise what's the point, right? So that means that the blast radius includes all your production apps and it includes all of your data. So that's what I mean by the blast radius. So this is a kind of threat model. And I'm going to use this as we talk through it, sort of talk through each of those inputs and then each of the outputs, and hopefully summarise it with another look at the octopus. I inspire to read the NIST paper. So why is the network an attack surface for your CI/CD pipeline? Well, it's because it's on the internet, right? Anything on the internet is accessible by anyone else on the internet, which is why so many bad things happen. So you've got opportunists out there who might just come across it by accident. You've got automated bots. You've got targeted attacks who might target you and try and penetrate your CI/CD server if it's on the internet. So, yeah, I mean, what can you do about it? So, verify your users. So what's funny about this talk, right, is a lot of it is really dumb stuff. It's like me going like, use granular authentication, use MFA, right? So because that is actually the answer, right? That is actually the answer. But yeah, so verify your users. That means MFA. That does mean MFA, particularly if it's on the internet. No shared accounts. Developers love shared accounts. Oh, isn't it great? We just log in as a developer. You know, no, that's not great at all. Don't do that. Yeah, MFA. Yeah, there's some operational processes you need as well, like particularly if you've got contractors, or if you've got people leaving and joining, you've got to have a process for onboarding and offboarding people. So it's more of an operational thing than a technical thing. Yeah, and if you're spinning something up, if you've got like a Circle CI server or a SaaS service, it needs to be integrated with your SSO. Because if everything's dotted all about, then when people leave, who's going to remember to go and remove everything? So just get your basics right, really. At this rate, I'm going to take far too long. Yeah, I'm going to speed up. Yeah, depending on the use case, if you can, use software as a service is another good thing you can do. So if you're using infrastructure as a service, you need to manage TLS, you need to keep it patched, you need to lock it down. So if you can, if it fits your use case, if it fits your threat model, consider software as a service for your CI/CD pipeline, because they're going to do loads of stuff for you already. There are still problems with software as a service, like I often see developers getting into a situation where they've got like Microsoft GitHub here, and then they've got the AWS here, and then they have to have like some God account on this side so that stuff can deploy over here and they don't lock it down. So like even if you're using SaaS, like use as few SaaSes as you can. And like people go like, oh well, Amazon code deploys crap. Oh shit, we're recording this. I didn't say that. Everyone I know at Amazon didn't say that, right? But like developers have always got a reason they don't want to do it, right? But that's like, the simpler it is, the easier it is to have a zero trust architecture. That's the underlying point that I want to make. And software as a service is a really good way to simplify things. Yeah, and as you're thinking about the network being a threat vector, like the endpoints that your developers use is an attack surface as well. Like particularly if you've got targeted attack, then attackers are going to go on LinkedIn and they're going to see who is your principal developer, and then they're going to, try and get hold of access to their device so they can escalate privilege. Because your principal developer's probably got access to everything, right? Because they're the principal developer. This happens. This happens. I've read many case studies of this actually happening in reality. So endpoints are in scope, and like developers hate it. I identify as a developer. But when your device is locked down, you're like, this is slowing me down, this VDI is crap because it's so slow. But actually, you do need some kind of endpoint detection because it is a weak point. Right, okay, so what I've been talking about verifying trust. So anything that's coming in on the network, don't just assume you trust it. Don't just assume you trust your users. Be explicit. That's what zero trust is about. And make that checking as continuous as you can. And be asset aware, right? Like I'm going like, okay, you need to protect your endpoints. Well, like a lot of you don't, right? But if you are going to be under targeted attack, then you do. So be asset aware. Be aware of what you're sort of protecting from, really. Yeah, dependencies. I mean, this stuff's quite motherhood and apple pie, actually, but this is the risk. We'll all be aware that there's been a number of cases where dependencies to software have been used to escalate privilege. And like actually even SolarWinds is an example of this, where the attackers, which the SVR, the Russians, embedded code into a network management piece of software that was used broadly by companies in the US and also like the White House and like Department of Defense, like all of the federal agencies, and then use that to steal all the emails. It's like massive, massive cyber breach. So this dependency thing is why we hear about supply chain and all the rest of it. So, so that's why it's such a focus. But there's also just like unpatched CVEs, right? Just like little things that you could fix up by applying latest. And this thing where, like, say you've got node and someone puts in a misspelling of it, so it's like mode, and so if you pull that in, it's like a malware. So there's like different versions of this where people try and inject stuff via dependencies, essentially. The tooling's really good. Like, just use the tooling, I would say. Like, OWASP dependency check could obviously be a shout, but you've got paid ones like Sneak. Dependabot is the one that's built into GitHub. They're all like quite mature in 2023. I mean, they were pretty crap in 2019, to be honest, but now they're all really good. So I would say just use them. People get quite excited about S-bombs. So S-bombs are this kind of like more advanced one that Google are working on. You could do a whole talk on S-bombs. S-bombs are really good, but it's a bit like Facebook or a social network. Unless everyone's using it, there's not much point of it. And with S-bombs, it's going to take, I think, a few years until everyone kind of adopts them. But keep an eye on S-bombs. That could make things better, but it's just not quite there yet. And you can do so much with the dependency check or Dependabot. But yeah, kind of lingering on this slide because it's just really simple. If you're not doing it, then do. You get an issue with these tools, all of these tools, you get an issue which a friend of mine calls red fatigue. I think it's a really good term for it, which is you think you just install the tool and then forget about it. But then the tool finds problems, and then like a more junior developer will look and say, oh, I don't know how to fix that. And so they disable it because all of these tools need some love and care and attention. So I would say, like, address reg fatigue. If you're going to install a tool that's going to check for, vulnerabilities in your dependencies, then make sure the team knows that you need to prioritize updating those dependencies and getting rid of the red. Because if you just disable it, it's the same thing as disabling your unit tests. This happens all the time. So yeah, it's part of the cost is to address this. Yeah, and I've always thought this, right? Just apply the latest version. Like, when I gave this talk the last time, like somebody actually like came up to argue with me after the talk about this, and they said, "Well, you can't just apply the latest version." I was like, "Well, why not?" He's like, "Well, the service might go down." And I said, "Well, yeah, but if you don't, then your service might get owned. Like, which do you care about more? Do you care more about like, can we test it sufficiently, or do we care more about getting breached and someone exfil all your data?" So consider just always applying the latest. Every single build pulls in the latest version, and then just have a good test suite, right? So if your test suite's good enough, then you're going to find an issue anyway as part of your regression. That's my opinion on that. Yeah, and again, just focusing on that operational model side of things, like do a fire drill. Like when Log4j happened, it was around Christmas. I don't know if anyone remembers it, if anyone lost any sort of... but just do a fire drill, right? Just say what happened, what would be the worst dependency in our stack to get like a CVE 10, and then just like tabletop it, right? And like do it on a Tuesday in March, because otherwise you're going to be doing it on Christmas Eve. That's why. Yeah, and then just to link back to the model, we're talking about breach ready, which is part of the zero trust model. We're not being unprepared, but being resilient. Actually, we're not only got a plan, but we've tested it. And we're talking about verifying trust. So instead of just assuming that the packages we're pulling in are all good, we're continuously updating them. We're continuously checking them against our allow list. Like code. I can't make a slide big enough to list all of the possible vulnerabilities or even classes and weaknesses in code. Like it's endless, right? Any bit of code that gets checked in and compiled and run on your systems is a threat. The tooling's got really good. In fact, anyone else has noticed that, but over the last 3 or 4 years, stuff like CodeQL, ngrep, like if you looked at these tools, then I would definitely recommend it. This area was quite weak like not that long ago. Actually, what these tools do is incredible now. We had a talk from SendGrid, didn't we, during the pandemic? Really, really, really incredible what you can do with these tools. They're like any other tool in software development that you have to embrace it. You can't just install it and it'll work. You have to understand what it's doing. You have to understand the results it's giving you. So if you've got like a particular authorization scheme, it's like, okay, if a person can see that, then that's business critical. Then test that. It sounds ridiculous, right? But like some of the tools will allow you to get right into your threat model and your use case, and you can install them with a default set of rules. That's great, and they'll give them alerts, and maybe software dev manager will be happy. But if you understand your threat model and you can follow the rule, you can do some incredible things. I mean, these things are programming languages in their own right. So look, the tooling is incredible, I think, compared to just a few years ago. There is something about like review, like a lot of developers I work with don't like, kind of moving away from a CI model, and like pull requests, and actually having 2 pairs of eyes on a code change is quite good. I mean, it's a piece of CSS, changing from pink to purple in 2 pairs, possibly. Maybe that's a risk indicator for the CEO. Maybe not. I don't know. But yeah, be sensible. But there's definitely changes. If you've got some Terraform changing egress rules, then that should have 2 pairs of eyes. Like, should be a requirement there that you've got a pull request, 2 people who actually kind of looked at it. Doing right. I suppose again, maybe it's just in the obvious, but like the only way the development teams are going to fail to commit vulnerabilities into your production environment is if they've got some training and understanding of cybersecurity. Right? So they should be threat modeling. They should be going on courses to teach them about SQL injection or the OWASP top 10. Or maybe it's prompt injection nowadays, I don't know. But that education piece, security champions, like actually having people learn about cybersecurity is how you get people to improve the quality of your code, essentially. It's really important. Yeah, I think I've already made this point, which is, if you've got a safety critical feature, then, test it and make the team aware of it. Like what you want, your perfect situation, right, is the graduate developer who's been on the team for 3 months, like goes, oh, I've just picked up a story, but it's actually on the most security critical part of the system. Could somebody who's been around for a long time sort of help me on it and pair on it? Like that they know. Like that's nirvana, right? If you could get there, if you could get that to that awareness, rather than just being another story, that's when you're really getting somewhere. Yeah, so what I've been talking about now, so verifying trust. You need every single code change. You can't just assume every code change is going to be good. You need to have processes, technical and people processes in place, so you're continuously verifying. And be asset aware. Like coming back to that, bit of CSS or like the margin on there are certain changes in your stack that are just really low risk, and it's not worth like over exaggerating the security importance of them. And then there's other changes to your code base which are just massively high risk and do require a little bit more thought. And so factor that in as you design your systems and as you design your processes. Developers. Developers are a threat. I'm a developer. I've written lots of accidents, malicious activity, targets for social engineering, sort of does happen. Obvious stuff really. There's an effect that I've noticed, because I work for a consultancy, right? And so you sort of turn up at a client, like they want to build a system, and you end up like setting up all the infrastructure to get to the point where you can actually show them something that's useful, right? And what I've observed over the years is there's a real tendency just to say, okay, let's get everything set up as quickly as possible so that we can show some value, right? And often that CI/CD is set up in the very first weeks of a project, and then everyone forgets about it until 3 years later when you run in the government's website and Francis Maud's on the phone. No, that's not a true story. It didn't actually happen. But think about it, right? You need to, as you build out your CI/CD system, you have to recognise it's part of production. So part of that is saying, actually, everyone shouldn't have access to everything. You know, I'm aware that I'm just making a point about granular authentication here. I'm just trying to make it as exciting as possible, right? But just get the basics right, put people in groups, assign them according to their job role, and review it constantly. Yeah, and you know, as always, particularly admin accounts. Like, you shouldn't have a situation where everyone is an admin of anything. If you're managing any significant risk, confidentiality, integrity, or availability. You monitor it, like monitoring response. I think particularly getting towards higher threat models, like it's really important to have an audit log, to use the sort of old school terminology of it, so that if you do deploy something that shouldn't have been deployed, you can see every step of the way and you can actually do some good forensics. Consider threat hunting, right? Like take the logs of your CI/CD server and try and work out what are some possible signatures of a malicious attack and look for them. You know, I suppose it's hard to justify time to do that, but if you're a security person, then why not, right? Yeah, and the operational models are just always really important. You know, the incident planning. The tech is exciting, but like just planning, practicing, all that kind of stuff is really important. Least privilege, be breach ready. What's going on here? I'm not familiar with Windows. Secret. So this is going on to the blast radius. Secret, like user secrets manager. Again, motherhood and apple pie. There's good tooling out there in 2023. AWS secrets manager, HashiCorp Vault. Amazing features like auto rotation. You know, just use it. And again, this is about being asset aware. It's by saying, okay, secrets are part of the system that could have a big impact. You know, if someone can get access to my database. Environment. You know, obviously there's a much longer talk you could do about designing a cloud environment to be secure, but you know, just all of that good stuff about separation between dev and prod, you know, and which ones should have production data and which ones shouldn't. You know, these cloud services that we use, I mean, you know, it sort of breaks my brain sometimes to understand all the different names and abstractions and all the rest of it, but you can get really good isolation, right? The other thing that really bugs me is I can never like relate it to the VLANs. Do you know what I mean? Like I'm kind of like, how does ARP work? Like, you can do it, right? You can separate your environment really well. You can say this is development, this is pre-prod, this is prod, and then you got to be specific about who's got access to what and what data you keep in each one. It's like the basic stuff, right? Is what gets you there. And I suppose getting towards the end of it now, but that effect I was talking about earlier, where you spin up a project and then you make a CI/CD server. Like, if you're thinking that CI/CD server is going to be the same CI/CD server or service that you're going to be using when this service has got, you know, business critical and 3 million users and is PCI compliant, then you've got to build your CI/CD to be production. Like your CI/CD is production, and it needs to be handled like production and not as part of the dev system. Because otherwise you'll have to kind of spin it back around, I suppose. Least privilege again. Authorization. Yeah, and just environments. I mean, in post-2018 GDPR, it's really important to know which environments have got the real data in it you know, somebody does a clone of prod into pre-prod, does a performance test, you email every single customer and the CEO's angry. Like, it's not even really a cybersecurity issue, but just sensible to have that isolation. Yeah, I don't know what this was. This was an idea I had the first time I did it, but not as passionate about it now. Yeah, least privileged, asset aware. Yeah, summary. Secure your pipeline. Like, zero trust is actually quite useful if you go back and, like, particularly the NIST paper. Amazing. Yeah, turn a security liability into a security asset. Yeah. Least privilege, breach ready, verify trust, asset aware. Go from open to granular authorization, least privilege. Verify trust, don't assume trust. Make it explicit. Try and do so continuously. Be breach ready, don't be unprepared. Be alert. Ideally be resilient. It's like you've tested it as well. Yeah, then be asset aware. So instead of just going, okay, this is just another ticket, then go, oh, okay. Oh, this ticket could take the whole system down if I get it wrong. Like, have that asset awareness. Adaptive. I don't know what adaptive means. It's not one of those consultant words, is it? Adaptive? Anyone? God knows. Be adaptive. I remember what it means. What it means is, as the risk that your business faces changes, change your response to the risk. So if you double in size and get twice as many customers, or if you take on a new territory, recognise that that might include more risks and you might have to change your processes. That's what adaptive means. I remembered it. Thanks for listening.
I've just got visions of you now walking outside InfoSec Europe with a big sandwich board saying zero trust is least privilege. And you get these vendors, won't name names, just be hounding you out, going, sod off, this is it's a new widget, it's a new toy, it's a new... So,
it's not a product, that's the thing.
Yeah.
It's not a product and just discuss. You know, we have that famous memes where they've got the photos of somebody stood behind a desk at, like, outside a university campus going, zero day trust.
That's me.
It's not a product, discuss or argue with me.
So I gave this, it's like a test audience at ThoughtWorks, just to get some feedback. And a colleague of mine, very, very clever person, she said, Jim, I came to this because it was about zero trust. And I don't know what zero trust is. And I thought you'd explain it to me. But instead, you've just ranted about access control. That was kind of the concept. Yeah, any sort of softball questions? Or? Read the NIST paper. I've never read it, but like skim it. What you can do is feed it into Claude AI. Do it that way. Cool. Thanks very much. And thanks so much for coming as well. And for future events, you don't have to listen to me whittering on again. Is anyone you know who wants to put a talk forward? If you think, like, actually that's probably not very interesting, probably is really interesting. Like, just come forward, and we'll be really pleased to give you time and a lovely audience to